Magnus at some point in the near future. So I wouldn't worry about Magnus not getting any love. He's already gotten a lot of it so far in the broadcast. So let's see what this big pairing, if Grischuk can take a bite out of Wesley's momentum, but both games, we're definitely going to want to watch both games.
Yeah.
We might actually need the simul screen at some point.
Right.
Where you put your, so we can watch the two games at once. That's going to be needed at some point because these two are just amazing games, amazing matchups, important for the tournament.
I'm also happy that we're looking at Sasha Grischuk's game because I guess it feels like we've seen a lot of Jan in this event and not that much of Sasha, except of course his very memorable win against Magnus yesterday.
Exactly.
Can he do the same now?
Game is underway. D4 and a Catalan. By the way, a Catalan that Wesley So himself loves to play as white. So it's always annoying when people play your stuff against you. And they're following the main lines of theory here.
Well, it's good news, bad news, right? Because you like it because it's good, but then you also at least know some of the plans and ideas, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That I remember Lubash Kovalik explaining that when he was the second of Nigel Short in Nigel Short's match with Garry Kasparov, that they did a lot of training to use Gary's openings against Gary. So Gary would be literally sitting looking at himself. And it wasn't an effective strategy, I must say. Nigel did not have a lot of success. Okay, still all very standard for this Catalan variation. White has given up his dark square bishop, but in return, he's made it nearly impossible for Black to get in this very important freeing break, c7, c5. e2, e3. Okay, that's a bit of a surprise for me. I think that you want to play knight d2 in that precise position, but okay.
By the way,
yes.
One board that was seemingly frozen for some time was the one between Jan and Magnus. And finally, Jan played b3 to start the game on move 1. And Magnus replied with g6, bishop b2, knight f6.
Very unusual game going on over there. We'll flip back, but
incredibly so.
Maybe we'll keep an eye, like you say, the simultaneous two screens. So
at
knight
least for now.
b2, knight b2 now on the board. Why you needed to include e2, e3, I'm not sure, but knight b2 on the board. So bishop f3, I assume the nuance is that you want to be able to recapture with the bishop so that your knight isn't committed, and he's done that. Bishop takes c6, and I'm assuming knight e4, bishop e7. And overall, Black is actually pretty safe. It almost looks like a Slav, semi-Slav with these pawns on c6 and b7. But Black has a very nice outpost, the b4 square.
The solid position doesn't look like much here with the opposite colored bishops. The structure is solid. It's not even clear what White's long-term plan should be, since e4, d5 doesn't do much to this position. I mean, you just see a series of trades taking place on the d5 square, and it may be even difficult to get it there, given that your pawn on d4 is going to come under assault. The knight's going to be on b4, guarding, quadruple guarding the d5 square. Hard to see what Grischuk's going to get out of this. That said, what is Black's main plan here? Is it to go for a c5 break? That looks reasonable. Or will he try for b5, which looks almost impossible to execute without moving some things around? Or I can't even see how he pulls that off. So it looks like the c5 break will be the one, if any, for Black.
Well, I really don't understand the knight on c4. The knight on c4, to my eyes, is not a well-placed piece. It simply, well, it doesn't belong on c4. a5 is really not a weakness. It's very hard to attack. And from c4, well, you're just not hitting anything. Conversely, if the knight were on e4, let's say earlier, your bishop would be been driven back, and then white does have an idea of playing king g2, rook h1, g4, g5. So I think after knight b4, followed by rook d7 and rook d8, I start to like black. Knight
By the way,
b4,
Magnus has a very natural looking Sicilian on tap in his game.
Mhm.
So we'll just keep an eye on that as well on your board. Looking good for black. Very natural, great play. This b3 move didn't seem to have transposed into anything special. So Magnus okay for now. And the c5 break that I mentioned played instantly by Wesley. He said, I'm not going to wait around at all. I'm just going to play c5, get the break. If you play for d5, you'll have to worry about the move knight to b4, hitting the pawn on d5 as your queen on c2 as well. So here's that c5 break, and you see Grischuk sit up in his chair as this is a move you have to restrain, but he didn't. And c5 is on the board.
Exactly, he did not. So he ended up capturing on c5, and well, after knight takes c5, is that almost
Pure symmetry?
It almost looks, yeah, exactly. If you put the pawn on g6 and h5, I think you have true symmetry there. I actually didn't think that c5, it's not a bad move, don't get me wrong. I actually thought that black could build up with doubling his rooks and then playing c5 and maybe even playing for an edge. But hey, drawing Sasha with black, well, that's a pretty good deal. So king g2, last turn. This looks, unfortunately, like a really, really tame position to me. Let me just turn to Jan and Magnus for a moment. We did see that move a4. I suspected that was coming because otherwise black had ideas of a5 and a3. So Jan said, well, let me put the kibosh on a5, a4 by playing a4 myself, opening up the position with en passant and rook b8. This is.
And who do you prefer here, guys? Which color would you both rather be?
I have a slight preference for black. I've always loved the King's Indian bishop, the Perk defense bishop, the fianchetto bishop, guarding my king. And, well, I just see a slightly backward pawn here and a slightly backward pawn here. I think it's easier to play black.
Well, I also think that black is for choice here precisely because I don't know what to do with white. Just
another problem too.
I'm just not impressed by whatever white's doing. I don't feel in any danger in any way from the black side in this position. White usually, to give black all this, open B file and pressure against your B pawn, white should have 3 more moves. Something like G4, G5 in the position already with H4, H5 coming, some kind of attack with F5. Like, we need moves. We don't need our knight sitting on B1 and no motion forward. And somehow black has gotten all this play. And now, has he played F5 or is that your move, Yas?
No, he did play
F5.
F5
has been played.
Yeah, I mean, you were mentioning.
Oh, sorry,
G4.
breaking news. Yes. We left that game at the right time because Grischuk and Wesley indeed have drawn. They're done. So we can go straight to the Magnus game on the main board.